Welcome to Positive Recovery MD. If you're listening, chances are you want to create happiness around you and thrive in your life. We're glad you're here and you've come to the right place. This podcast will inspire and motivate you to not merely survive your recovery journey, we'll give you the tools to build or strengthen your foundation to thrive and flourish in your life. Each week, we'll come together as a community to have authentic conversations around addiction, recovery, and what matters. Growth and progress, not perfection. All while developing positive habits for you to utilize in your life. To learn more, please visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to receive the daily positive interventions that we'll review, as well as gain access to exclusive Positive Recovery content available only to Positive Recovery MD listeners. All right, let's get started.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another installment of Positive Recovery MD's podcast with Dr. Jason Powers. We have a substitute awesome host, Grif Palmer, and we have a special guest who Grif is going to introduce in a second, but fellow writer. I'm not as good as him most likely, but I always love when masters of the pen come on. Tom Nunan, right?
That's right.
All right, Grif, you want to kick us off with his intro?
Absolutely. Great to have you here today, Tom. Thanks for taking time out of what I know is always a very productive schedule to join us today. So we're really excited to have you on and get to share your story and, just share a little inspiration and hope with our listeners. So I've known Tom for about 10 years. Tom's a globally recognized expert and established leader in TV, film, academia, and Fortune 50 media management. So a network and studio president, production company owner, longtime graduate level visiting professor at UCLA's prestigious theater, film, and TV school and its leadership committees. Tom's an executive producer of an Oscar-winning film, among many other TV, film, and new media productions as well. He's also a high-level consultant to the world's largest and most influential media companies and university. So Tom's really got an amazing track record of successes and achievements at top levels across the spectrum of producing, teaching, and all across the media world. So he's also a co-founder and past vice chair and chairman of the Joyful Heart Foundation. That's the brainchild of Emmy and Golden Globe winner Mariska Hargitay. Tom's been on the leading edge of helping survivors of sexual harassment, sexual assault, rape, and child abuse since he co-founded the organization in 2004. Joyful Heart has created the Tom Nunan Excellence Award, which is an incentive they use to inspire staff, board members, stakeholders, and other philanthropists to work hard in their pursuits to provide education, healing, and empowerment to the sexual assault survivor community. So after a two-decade career helping build various programs at UCLA and attracting some of the industry's top talent for VIP guest appearances, I'd love to have that list. It includes Hollywood's A-list of executive suites, directors' chairs, and acting pools. Tom was then asked to create and execute the first ever Masters of Fine Arts in television for the School of Theater, Film, and TV. The responsibility of both creating and executing this huge task, basically designing a whole new MFA, was the first of its kind and the only new MFA created in the last 35 years at UCLA school. So really amazing accomplishment. So as a leader in the entertainment industry, head of movies for television at ABC, one of 6 founding members that helped create and build the Fox network, ultimately running all of primetime and late night at Fox. He was also the president of NBC Studio, now known as NBC Universal, and the president of UPN, which is everybody knows now as CW. So he also founded Bullseye Entertainment, which is responsible for multiple Oscar-winning Film Crash, among other beloved titles. And he's also runs Nunan Consulting Services. So needless to say, Tom's had an amazing long career of brand building, content innovation, and just working across the media business. So Tom's also a recipient of the Humanitas and Peabody Awards, the intersection with our friendship and the Positive Recovery MD podcast is really got me super excited to have you today, Tom. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Grif, and thanks for rattling off that long set of credits for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was just one person you were talking about, right?
Correct.
Wow. So yeah, Tom, tell us what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Just whatever you want to say.
Well, I grew up. My parents are from Kentucky, and I grew up in a very Southern kind of household, very patriarchal, lower middle class. We were always expected to take care of ourselves from a very, very early age. We had three messages sort of repeated to us on the regular. One was trust no one. The next one was people don't change. And the third one was one that I added. My parents didn't give me this saying, but it's one that I came to believe, which was there is no God. So I grew up with those three guides, basically. People don't change, trust no one, and there's no God.
So you went right into the priesthood with those spiritual ethos, right?
It's funny. I was raised Catholic, and I think that you would define our family's practice with that religion as devout, meaning that we went to church every Sunday. We went to church on holy days. We even went to church on national holidays, birthdays. Like, we were always at church. And so I was surrounded by Catholicism, by the Old and the New Testament. And yet I had no religious or spiritual feeling from that religion. When I say no religious feeling, I didn't have any positive connection, so to speak, with spirituality whatsoever. I did learn a lot of things to fear through that religion. But I will say on the positive front, it probably inspired me in the arts. I did love the literature. I loved the presentation. I loved the show business, if you will, of the rituals of Catholicism.
Yes, it's very flamboyant with the hats and the wands. And
we didn't have any air conditioning, and in our first few homes, we didn't have any carpeting. And so it felt also very lush to me. It felt very high end, and that was appealing to me. I grew up in the Mad Men era, meaning I grew up in the 60s and 70s. My parents were very social up until the day my dad died, and about almost 8 years ago, this coming July. They were always entertaining. And it was the only time I really saw my dad happy was when he was drinking. And so my thought growing up was, as soon as I become old enough, I want to start drinking too, because that seems to be the only path towards well-being and happiness. I was a good kid. My older sisters and younger brother, we were all good kids. We were type A, high achievers, very athletic, award-winning. And yet at home, there was nothing there. It was like we were at a boarding house. It was surreal, actually, because looking back and seeing what kind of ways that one measures success. My sisters have been very successful. My brother's very successful. I've had some achievements, but our home life was really, really lacking. My father was very sick. He had bipolar. It was extreme. He was hospitalized several times over the course of my childhood. And he just seemed like a very, very unhappy guy. So when I got to college, I started drinking, and I was originally a binge drinker. And on the weekends, the only way I knew how to drink was to get drunk. I didn't know that you could do it any other way. I really thought that's what the whole purpose of it was, to completely black out. And I did. And I was good at it. And it was like anything else I did in life. I wanted to be the best at it. I wanted to be the hardest drinker you knew. I wanted to have that reputation of Tom can drink anyone under the table. And I could. And I did. I did that for several years. And then it became, I would start to drink, because I'd go out to work dinners or work events. And I gave myself permission to start drinking during the week. And then I was drinking every night. And ultimately, it became something I had to do versus something I wanted to do. I didn't have any of the usual sort of cliche, big consequences that often get people sober, meaning I didn't get a DUI. I was never fired from a job. I never had a relationship served me an ultimatum, because of my drinking. I was just a very unhappy guy, very driven, trying to get over whatever the next mountain was for me to climb. Running a network, running a studio, winning an Academy Award. One of these things has got to make me happy, right? It's got to make me fulfilled. I'll teach at the very place I went to film school. That's got to do it, right? I can be asked to create a master's program. That's going to fill me up, right? No, So ultimately, I had that moment of incomprehensible demoralization. I had known I was suffering for a long time, but I didn't know I was an alcoholic until I came into the rooms of AA. I had a really bad night that was very scary. Ultimately, nothing consequential occurred. It was more just my own fears. And I woke up and I just knew after that terrible night, I've got to stop. And I knew that AA was successful at helping people stop. And that's all that I cared about at the time, was just stopping. I just wanted to stop being a slave to this drinking.
Is that what you were afraid of the night before when you said you just had a lot of fear? Was it a realization that you were enslaved to the drink, or was it something else?
I had been trying for 10 years to stop drinking on my own. And every night I would do the experiment of either trying not to drink or trying to only have one drink, and I would fail. I had gotten this challenge from a rehab expert who I knew from my travels in entertainment. And he was on the board of this health initiative that I was aware of and worked with. And I told him that I thought I had a drinking problem. And he said, well, why don't you try some controlled drinking, which was a concept that was completely foreign to me. Why would anyone want to control their drinking? That's not the purpose. So I tried it and I couldn't do it. And I tried it for 10 years. And I'd been able to do anything I set my mind to, but not that. I could not control my drinking. What I was afraid of, Dr. Powers, was that I might have gotten into a car accident. I had woken up in a blackout. I was covered in blood. My car was not out in front of my house. I didn't know what had happened. And so I was terrified that some tragedy had occurred and I had somehow gotten home to my house. As it turns out, there were legitimate reasons. I had climbed over a fence. I had fallen on my back. That had opened up a wound. That's why I was bloody. The girl I was out with took the keys and my car. That's why there was no car. But I had imagined a much more apocalyptic scenario.
Wow, thank God. Wow.
I went into the rooms of AA and read the 12 steps, read the traditions that were in banners up on the wall. And I just thought it was a cruel joke, because I'm not a spiritual guy. I'm not a God guy. In fact, I'm an anti-God guy at that point. And I thought, okay, well, I've tried it my way for 10 years. It hasn't worked. I'm just going to do it. I had that surrender. I had that willingness. And from that day forward, July 24th, 2008, I've never had a drink since. And I had to get up in the middle of the night to go get alcohol. I was so obsessed with it. Like the idea that I'd go to a meeting of AA and never have a drink again, at least, up to today, was incomprehensible to me, unimaginable. So I saw the guys in the room. I took direction. I listened to people, and they said, go to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps. And so I did. I went to meetings. I listened to what you had to say, and I saw that people did change. People could change. But I knew that I could only work the steps with the help of a sponsor. So I found a sponsor. He told me his story. I told him mine. We grew to trust each other, and I realized I could trust someone. And as we worked the steps together, I found a higher power. I found a God that I could believe in, and I even reconnected with the religion of my youth along the way. So I learned that I can trust people, that people do change, and that there is a God. And because I have a God in my life today, everything in my life has changed for the better.
That's awesome. What would you say is the biggest difference working today in your industry, being sober versus, pre-2008?
Well, I feel my feelings much more deeply. I don't run away from, I don't try to escape in the face of any struggle or obstacle. I think I'm a kinder person to others. I think that they've experienced someone who's much more patient and much more interested in their well-being and their welfare. I'm not so self-obsessed, you know. I had taught for 17 years before I ever got into AA. So I knew the concept of service and helping others, but I think that I'm much more available emotionally for other people and for what they have to say. I don't put such a premium on big things happening with my career professionally, with credits or money to measure success, which has been probably my very biggest challenge, is that I always put outside affirmation and validation as some kind of idea that I'm okay. You know, I really, I think, spent most of my life worried about what other people think about me. And I still do. That is still a big character defect of mine. The same thing with money. You know, do people think I have enough money? Am I making enough money? It's really more like what do other people think about me more than my own welfare? Because I feel like I'm pretty good welfare wise, but I've worried a lot about what other people think about me, and I still do that.
Well, you know why we do that? The human brain looks for signs that we won't be abandoned, because, you know, we evolved over hundreds of thousands of years where being alone was like death, right? So belonging in a group was survival. Like alone, we could never have enough resources. We couldn't reproduce, obviously. So there's this archaic survival instinct. And one of the ways that our brain sort of satisfies the fear of dying, it's completely subconscious, is looking around for signs that we have power. So, you know, the brain's always comparing. Do I have more money or power than those around me? Which is why people that like drive the nicest car and whatever, you know, or if they live in a neighborhood and their house is bigger, they're happier than those who even live in a great neighborhood with all these amenities, but have a tiny house, right? And so even the people that say they don't care what others think about them actually care about that more than people like you who recognize it. It's like, yeah, I care. And it really matters. But I think, now I could be wrong, but another thing that the brain mistakenly does is thinking that we're going to be happy when I win an Emmy, I win an Oscar, whatever it is. And then we get that. The reason why those things don't last is because of something called hedonic adaptation. We just sort of adapt to whatever happens. It's like, I always wanted to be a published author. Like when I was a kid, that would be the greatest, you know, being a doctor would be okay, but like being a published author for some reason. Sorry, and once I got it, I was happy for about 5 seconds. But like when my kids are pains in the ass and the plumber's not coming, it just doesn't matter, right? Those things don't really do anything. And even though we know that, our brains still do it. We're really bad at effective forecasting. Like, I'm going to be happy if I win the lottery, or I'll be happy. But, you know, it's interesting to me that you sort of did things like teach for so long, and you did hit milestones of achievement. And that's also completely okay, because one of the 5 areas where we find human happiness is achievement, but not doing it for the sake of recognition, power, glory. It's just sort of like knowing that you push yourself towards meaningful goals. And I'd say that you probably have more time now to do the more meaningful things. I'd say, I don't know. Like, tell me about working on that amazing movie, My Name is Bill W.
When I was running movies for television at ABC, back when I was doing that, it was in the mid to late 1980s, and TV movies were to television what, let's say, reality shows are to it today, meaning they were utterly ubiquitous. There were only 3 networks, and all 3 of them had several nights a week dedicated to TV movies, which was really strange when you think about it now. Like, most network television is series, whether it's reality-based series, comedies, or dramas. There's very few TV movies or miniseries. But this was a time when that was extremely popular for whatever reason. And the most elite kind of film that could be made was something called the Hallmark Hall of Fame.
Right.
And that was considered, you know, very special film. And when I took over movies for TV there, ABC said, we've got a new movie that Hallmark wants to do with us. And it's called My Name is Bill W. And I said, well, what does W represent? Like, I didn't know anything about any of it, you know. And so I got to learn all about AA. I got to learn about, obviously for Bill W. and Dr. Bob and Lois. And I only was learning this through the script that they provided us, which was very, very, very true and authentic to what we know historically about Bill and Bob and Lois and the formation of Alcoholics Anonymous. As a young man running movies for TV at ABC who had no exposure to AA at that point, didn't know anyone in AA, didn't even know if it still existed in the 1980s, I found the story utterly unbelievable. And I kept giving the writers and producers and the director notes saying, Lois should leave Bill. Bill, Bill should go off on his own. What does he need Dr. Bob for? I'm giving them all these notes, and the producers and everybody were freaking out because, who's this young guy? I was in my mid-20s at that point, and I'm like, and I'm telling them how to change their story. I got hauled into the network president's office, and he said, listen, you don't seem to understand. This is a sacred story to these people. I want you to stay away from that script. You can get involved in casting, the director, the marketing, the launch. Do not touch that script. It's sacred to them. And I said, okay, whatever. It doesn't work. That story's ridiculous. It's insane. I can't believe it's true. And of course, I was wrong about all those things. And the movie turned out to be an extremely popular film, very successful when it aired, won a lot of awards, and it's in a lot of rehabs across the country. It's one of the first things people watch, actually, when they go to detoxes and rehabs. It's like, these are the people who created AA.
And they see the version where he actually stayed with Lois. It wasn't a good Hallmark TV movie. My God. There was no Harlequin romance. So how did you become a contributing writer for Forbes magazine?
Over the years, UCLA, where I went to school, I graduated from the film school in 1984, and then I started teaching there about, I guess, in 1990, I don't know, whenever 27 years ago was. And UCLA gets called a lot for expert opinions on things, on what's going on in the news. And because of the variety of my experiences, I often am the expert on behalf of UCLA. And Forbes contacted them and they said, listen, we noticed that this guy, Tom Nunan, gets quoted like 80 to 100 times a year. We love the way he talks about the business. Do you think he'd ever want to write for Forbes? And they contacted me, I guess, last year or 2 years ago, maybe just a year ago. I said I'd be happy to write for them. So that's how it worked.
It's amazing, Tom. Every time I read those Forbes articles, I actually can hear your voice as I'm reading them. It's like you're reading them to me personally. It's great.
Well, that makes me feel good.
Yeah.
So I've got another question on the spirit side, because it's the part where I got goosebumps, which has happened a couple of times already. But, you talked about, the childhood religiosity, but no real connection. And then those three things kind of getting turned on their head, the trust and people don't change and there is no God. How did that happen for you? Was that like a white light Bill W. experience, or was it just almost imperceptible to you, but the people around you could see it? What was your experience with that?
Well, I think that, let me start by saying this. It was not a white light experience like Bill describes. However, as Bill, one of my favorite passages out of the big book is when Bill is describing his meeting with Ebby, and Ebby is rattling on about the Oxford group, and Bill his mind wanders to his own childhood and his relationship with his grandfather, and how his grandfather really waved him away from religion completely, and talked about the universe having its own music, so to speak. They refer to it as the spheres, but we know the spheres as planets, and I think it's one of the most evocative parts of the book for me, because I think we've all done it. You guys may be doing it right now as I talk. Our minds wander to our past, and we're triggered by memories when people talk to us. And when I came into AA and I saw the steps up on the wall and I saw the higher power stuff and everything, I thought of my past, and I thought of my childhood, and I thought of all the times that I wanted to believe that there was a God, that I wanted to believe that there was something bigger, but I just had it drummed out of me. And so it was a feeling of like, maybe this place will let me have a relationship somehow with this God that I've heard about. Maybe this is finally my path. And it wasn't until I started working with a sponsor and we actually started working the steps, 2 and 3, of course, most specifically, that I've discovered I can create a God of my own understanding, not the God that I was raised with, not that I understood today, but the God that I wanted in my life. And I'm a good student. I'm a type A, and so if you tell me I could do these things, I do it, and I try to do it excellently. Turns out it works. And so it was the first time I was working the steps, and that's when I think it started to come into me.
So who is Russell Moon and how did he affect your life?
Well, Russell Moon is a fellow who passed away a few years ago, who was kind of a legendary figure in Westside Men's AA because he was this really fancy dentist who had a lot of money and had collected a lot of expensive cars and was kind of living this very high-end life in a very Tony part of LA called Brentwood. And very attractive guy, but he was in AA, and he always seemed like he had everything. He had the money, he had the women, he had the cars, he had the great house, and he was sober. And it was really appealing. He had this tragic bicycling accident where he was hit and was rendered a quadriplegic. And I was asked by my sponsor to start taking meetings to Russell's house because Russell wasn't getting out as much as he wanted, and he wasn't being of service to other guys. And so I got to know Russell that way. And you don't know me, Dr. Powers, but I'm a guy that doesn't go to hospitals when friends get sick. I don't go to funerals. But when I got sober, all that changed, and I started going to hospitals, and I went to funerals, and I wanted to be part of this community and show up for people. And so I went to Russell's house, and I got to know this man who was confined to a wheelchair, and something that in real life my past life would have made me deeply uncomfortable. It would have been unbearable for me. But with a higher power in my life and with the feeling of service, and if you knew Russell Moon, you know that I was getting so much more out of it than he was, because he's just this brilliant guy, super smart, really funny, and was just a daily inspiration to me, because if he could stay sober as a quadriplegic and stay positive, I mean, I can do it too.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Thanks, man. So I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions in sort of the flair of Robert Litton from the Studio Actors Guild. So the first one would be, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word? The word I've been relying on most recently that I'm going to say is my favorite is surrender.
And your least favorite word?
Hate.
Pain?
Hate. H-A-T-E.
Okay, got it. Yeah. And what's your favorite sound?
The sound of the crowd right before a Springsteen concert starts.
The boss. What's your least favorite sound?
My own thoughts.
All right. So if you could have done any other vocation, starting from a young age, what would it have been? What would you have liked to have a go at in another life, say?
When I went to film school at UCLA, there were 2 really famous graduates who had come before me. One most people know about is Francis Ford Coppola, but another that people don't really know that often is a Jim Morrison from The Doors. Also went to the film school at UCLA, was a screenwriter. And when I was in film school, my thought was, well, I'll take either one of those careers. I'll take Coppola's career or I'll take Jim Morrison's. I really had a dream, like a lot of young guys do, to be a rock star. And I think I would have liked to have tried that.
Good answer. Me too. What vocation would you have loathed to be forced to do your whole life?
Mortician.
All right. And assuming there's a God, when you pass and you're at the gates of heaven, what words do you want to hear come out of God's mouth?
You're home.
Awesome. Well, thanks. So the next part will be to go over the positive intervention. Were you able to do it?
I did do it.
Awesome. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is just sort of read the opening quote and then the PI, and then I'll ask you to share. So kindness trumps greed. It asks for sharing. Kindness trumps fear. It calls forth gratefulness and love. Kindness trumps even stupidity, for with sharing and love, one learns. Mark Estrin. So today's PI, first thing in the morning and last thing before you go to bed, journal about what you have to be grateful for. Start your day off right by making a 10-item gratitude list of whatever resonates with you as something to appreciate today. At night, write down 3 things that happened today and why. Use an optimistic explanatory style. So what was that experience like for you?
Well, I got a secret to share with you. I'm already doing a gratitude list every day. I've been doing it for, I guess, a little over a year now. I don't know. I'm on one with Grif, actually. And Grif's a role model of mine in so many ways. It would take us an hour just to inventory that man and what he means to me. So I know the positive benefits of a gratitude list because I do it every day. But it always puts me in my right frame of mind. I know if I miss it and I wait till the afternoon or evening to do it, I'm the guy who suffers the most because of that. And I think that the reason the gratitude list is so successful, for me at least, is that it immediately gets me out of my head about anything negative, any obsessive dark thoughts I might be having, fears, and right into not only gratitude about my life today, but my gratitude of so many others. So it just takes me out of myself. And I think that that's the biggest impact it has.
Awesome. Thanks. Grif, since I know you do it now, what was your sort of day like after doing it?
Yeah. So this has been a really interesting thing. When I moved back to LA, for job stuff in 2017. And one of the reasons I accepted the job, besides it was a really killer offer, I was living not an LA lifestyle, but one of the reasons I said yes was because I knew Tom and this group of West Side men was there, and that I could live very comfortably in my recovery in that community, right? So it was super attractive. And when I got there, one of the young guys that had started this list said, "Hey, we do a gratitude list. You want to be on it?" And like I had done gratitude lists because my sponsor told me to. And, obviously gratitude's a big topic in AA meetings. But, I was kind of like, do you know how long I've been sober? Like, do you know who I am? I didn't say that, but I thought it. It was like, okay, I'll do your gratitude list. And so I started doing it. And this list, guys come and go, but it was probably what, Tom, 20 or 30 of us. And some guys do one every day. Some guys just do one when they feel like it. And there's some guys on it that just audit it, right? They just read them and they don't write them. So, but what I learned, I really have to say that list is probably the biggest turbocharge to my sobriety in the last decade. And what I guess it's like doing push-ups or yoga or, like almost every daily, intervention that you have in your book, right? It's like it's in the practice. And so what I realized the same thing that Tom did, which is, I can, one, if you practice something regularly, you get better at it, kind of like going to AA meetings. But it's like my barometer now, when they come just pouring out when I'm having my coffee and the morning's getting going and, it's like I have to stop at 10. I know I'm in a really good place. And then other days when I'm not in a good place in my head, right, it's like I'm kind of making them up. But the other interesting thing is reading them because they come in, throughout the day. There's a couple of guys that do them at night. So you wake up in the morning, and just watching people's lives. Like you see them go through death and birth and job loss and amazing awards and all these, and some guys are more cryptic than others in their descriptions of that stuff. But you just realize it's like, wow, there actually really is always something to be grateful for, And Russell was, part of that, he did a gratitude list. And it was just like Tom said, it's like, the old thing, if everybody in the AA meeting threw their problems into the middle of the room, you'd immediately grab yours back as as you can. So it's a great practice.
People do gratitude lists on their own, but having a shared gratitude list is really like it takes it to an utterly different dimension, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to give us your story and experience and amazing spiritual transformation. That's what happened. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Positive Recovery MD. Don't forget to visit positiverecoverymd.com to sign up to get your daily positive intervention sent straight to your inbox. Be sure to subscribe to Positive Recovery MD on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast to receive an automatic download when a new episode drops. And as always, if you or someone you know needs help, visit positiverecovery.com or call 877-4-SOBRIETY, which is 877-476-2743. We are here to help.